this chapter was about high frequency words. I had lots of notes in this chapter. So I thought we could start with the breakout room and just start with something that you loved from this chapter. Sound good? That way everybody has a chance to share. So let's see if I can do this now. Breakout rooms. Everybody good with 2 breakout rooms? Like 5 people, 5 apiece? Is that good? Okay. All right, so I feel like in our group, a lot of what we talked about was the automaticity of the sight words and the difference between high frequency words and sight words. How did the other group make out? Anybody want to kind of speak for them about something they loved from this chapter? Are we all here?
I don't see anyone from the other group. I just see us.
Oh, yeah. All right. They're back. I kicked them out. Were you guys able to hear the last thing I said, or did you just get back? No? Did any, so our group talked a lot about the difference between high frequency words and sight words and how we liked that clarified that, the charts in this chapter. And we talked a little bit about what districts are using to assess kids with their high frequency words or sight words, and what would be considered automatic. You know, how long do we give them to decode a word, or how do we know that they're reading it with automaticity? Does anyone from the other breakout room want to talk a little bit about what they loved about this chapter? Ken and Kelly, I'm gonna let you guys talk, or Mackenzie, go ahead. I was gonna say, I'm gonna start calling on people.
We kind of had some of the similar, like what you were talking about, just the difference between high frequency and sight word. And we talked a lot about just like appreciating kind of a better understanding of it and how that has shifted. And I had mentioned too what Aaron had said about David Kilpatrick. That was kind of my aha moment when we saw him at that conference of what a sight word really is. And I know someone in our group mentioned just, you know, different kids having different sight words based on their interest and what they're exposed to. So
right, and I had written that down too about what a sight word really is. Did anybody find the orthographic mapping piece to be interesting or like an aha moment?
I might yell in the middle because my kid is up, but I think orthographic mapping for a teacher, once we learn it and we understand it, it absolutely influences all of our teaching. Like every word we present, you look at it.
Honestly, my daughter brought home a library book and a chapter book, and we're reading it, and I'm like, I'm just going to buy this for you so that I can map the words you don't know, and we can go through and talk about them, and I can mark it all up, because I can't do that to a library book. But I'm like, this is such, you know, like Kelly just said, it influences every way you think about things, how you teach decoding and encoding. I mean, I think, but did anybody get that out of that part of the book? Does anybody use orthographic mapping right now when they're teaching spelling or different like encoding?
We do in the intervention groups.
No, and that's the one thing that I said that I started doing.
Carolyn, can you say that one more time?
I just said, no, I don't, but it's one of my goals that I really need to add that piece into our phonics instruction. And we talk about each word and the parts that make it difficult for our tricky words. Why is it a tricky word? And we look at the spelling and underline the parts that don't match. So, I suppose to some degree, we do tear the word apart, but a true orthographic mapping, no, I don't do yet.
I could go out and get what I the other night, because they're just like the Alconin boxes on a page, and I've been using those with my phonics program just in dry erase sleeves, and I feel like I use it with 5th graders at this point. I mean, because they're not really hearing the sounds and understanding where the different like sounds or letters or phonics patterns go. And you can see it working in their brains when, they're doing it. And having my daughter do it last night with some different words. And I said to her, this is how your brain will learn how to map these words. And it just makes so much sense to me now. And I feel like, where was this 15 years ago when I learned how to teach kids how to read? But so we had a parent call them the Heartword method. Has anybody heard of that? Which is the same thing as like tricky words. And so I feel like it's all encompassed in one. Oh, there's that. So any more about, well, we can look a little bit at some of these questions. Which of the high leverage instructional routines did you find most valuable? So that was prioritizing high frequency words for instruction, orthographic mapping, or embedding the high frequency words in learning throughout the day. Anybody have anything that they found especially helpful or interesting in those high leverage instructional routines?
I think that embedding them throughout the day has been the most fun, because, I mean, let's be honest, teaching to read is so rewarding. But then when you teach them the word in ELA and you're doing something in science and they see it, or they see it within another word, or, just anything that crosses over into a different subject area, like you feel like, darn it, I am making a difference. I am doing the right thing.
Well, and I will say, Kelly must be, we know she is, but she is an amazing teacher, because one of her friends said to me today, Miss Halfley told me that's my back voice to make a letter sound. And I was like, whoa, this child is really getting this. So it's coming through, Kelly, everything you're doing.
Wait, is it Mrs. Halfley or is it Mrs. Coffee?
Coffee, yep.
Okay.
But I mean, so it is everything you're doing, if you're doing it across all these different, parts of the day, do leave, it leaves an impression on them, or they're getting, it's helping them to absorb it more.
One thing, Kate, I had mentioned to my group, I want to just let everyone know, really great reading. I don't know if anyone has heard about that reading program, but they have some pretty good like free resources for tricky heart words on their website.
Yes, I'm gonna look this up real quick.
Yeah.
Do they show the videos?
Yeah, they show the videos of some words with the breakdown of like the orthographic mapping, and they also have some templates and a good, like, pretty similar to this, of mapping of the word, like lesson plan, or just like, teacher talk script. So they do have some nice free resources if anyone wanted to check those out or needed some.
Those are great, because they even show the kids videos. Like some of our LTAs did quick double dip work last year, and they could just take an iPad or a computer down and go through those videos of the heart words with kids. Like even if you're just sitting in the hallway and they're just going through them on their iPad. That's a really great website. So before we jump into the next breakout session, I just wanted to throw this out there, that the working memory and the automaticity of the sight words, it talks about how with automaticity, the cognitive load is decreased. So kids then could spend more time on comprehension. which does make sense. My friend continues to recommend a book to me called Explicit Instruction by Anita Archer. And her book, chapter 1, is free online, so you can print it and read it. And she talks a ton about working memory and how automaticity of things like sight words and math facts decrease the cognitive load so that they can focus on the next step, which like would be comprehension, or in math would be the word problem. So I just thought if anybody wanted to check that out, it is free to download the first chapter. And it was a really quick read, and I felt like it was things we know, but it was good to hear it again. All right, are we ready for a new breakout room? We'll talk about things we love from chapter 5. MSV. Here we go. Are we all back? Not yet. Where'd Kelly and Ken go? Did they leave?
I'm here. I was just talking to the girls in the dugout, friends.
Oh, sorry, wrong Kelly. Kelly Wagner.
Or said anything, so, and then they went away, so I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I'm
Oh.
wondering, 'cause it went like black and then it like disappeared.
Oh,
So I'm wondering if they were having internet issues.
All right, that makes sense because I'm like, they're the only ones not back yet. All right, so anybody from the other group want to share out what they loved from chapter 5 or what they found interesting? Kelly, can you be the spokesperson for that group?
Sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I said I really liked the zooming in on the taking the tricky words to the writing for closer analysis. I liked like the steps that they went through. For some of my students, that's a harder piece, and like then just like breaking things down. A lot of my special ed students are still working on like basic CVC and things like that. So I liked how it broke it down so then they could be more successful in there. And I thought a lot of the visuals that they had in this chapter were beneficial for myself.
Yeah, and like just looking at that now, I do have things highlighted, so I must have read it at some point. But I feel like, yes, like with intervention and special ed, I think that's something we probably all, do or could do more of, is like pulling those specific words and mapping them and talking about how to decode them. I feel like that's a good reinforcement of the right things to be doing with kids when they're not decoding correctly. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about from that chapter?
I mean, I'll talk about anything.
I was gonna say, Kelly, you can be the spokesperson. What did you guys find that you loved from that chapter? From the MSV chapter?
Well, a lot of our discussion was about sounds really do, especially in our lower grades or the grades, second and first grade where kids are struggling, sounds really are the first step. And that we don't really look at anything in these books, or at least I don't want to throw this thought out as everybody's guiding practice. I don't look at any of their ideas as telling me yes or no, you should or should not do it. They're more helpful in prioritizing what might be better strategies and what might not be, because we're talking about trying to help kids that are not learning in the traditional way. So who's to know what practice may or may not reach what child?
Right. So you mean like using some of these strategies?
Like we kind of got like low key off topic and not necessarily everything that was in the book, but just the idea in general when we read books like this, how they're really just helping us form productive thoughts, not necessarily like a checklist of what we should and should not do.
Right. No, yes. I mean, I feel like that makes sense, and that you can only take, I mean, it's not like we can take this whole book and throw it at what we're doing. It's just going to be what works for us and what works for our kids. How about the misunderstandings? We need to avoid telling students to sound it out. I mean, how many of us use like sound it out or read through the word as their go-to cue?
I feel like, go for it, you.
Yeah, no, I always do that. You have to have them start looking at the letter sounds and see how they go together.
I always put that as your first attack strategy, because that's literally what I've spent the whole year teaching them, is that this letter makes this sound and it's the sounds you put together to make words.
Right. And I mean, even in an F&P heavy school, like Sydney was very heavy in Fonis and Pinnell and balanced literacy, but I don't recall any of us ever telling a kid, like, let's say the beginning sound and then make a guess for the rest of it. I mean, I feel like I just have never heard anyone say that. So, you know, I'm wondering if that's really still used as much as it used to be. Like Mackenzie, you had talked about your college experience. Is that how you said it was a F&P heavy school. Is that how they went about cueing kids?
I would say it was more, it wasn't that and it wasn't as extreme in here as that sounding out wasn't the first, but it was more like they were all given equal weight. So like there was equal weight to sounding it out and using the picture and, you know, skipping the word and going back to it. So there wasn't that, in my opinion, again, this was just me as an observer and grad assistant, but there wasn't that stress of the sounding out that I feel like we use and see more now with different programs. So it was more like all of that was just equally weighted. That makes sense.
Right. Well, yeah, no, it does. I feel like when we used to have like BT BOCES come in and coach us during reading groups, and cross-checking was a big strategy that they were pushing, which is listed in here. And I used to have it on an anchor chart for my kindergartners to cross-check when reading, meaning stretch it out, but then go back and look at pictures and ask themselves, you know, does that make sense? And I can remember some people saying, can kindergartners really do that? Like you literally put the word cross-check on an anchor chart. And I thought, but they can. I mean, if you teach them how to do it, but that was using those other two last, the other two pieces. So when you guys are teaching reading groups, does anybody feel like you weight them equally, or is there one you use more than the other?
I feel like I'm constantly, like, I can't tell you how many times a day, you know, I have my hand in the air. I was like, well, let's say those sounds and blend them, counting the syllables, counting the sounds. You know, we have I know all of second grade, we have huge Vowel Valley display right up on our walls. We'll say, well, let's look over at Vowel Valley. So it's a huge focus on the phonics at second grade, because I mean, you can go to I find myself going to the visual for my struggling readers, but most of them I'm relying on that code and those phonics and saying it out loud and saying, does that sound right? Let's look at Vowel Valley, the whole cross-check thing. But I find that I am way heavy in the phonics portion of it all day long. You know, we're tapping it, we're mapping it, we're graphing it. We're pushing those chips for the sounds to recognize how many letters make that sound. So not a lot of visuals. I don't think I do. I'm trying to get better at the meaning in the word itself, but that's kind of what I find myself doing all day.
Yeah, and I feel like that, I mean, it sounds like our first and second grade, from what I've, been a part of in those classrooms, is that the visual and the phonics and the stretching it out or reading through the word is the heaviest. Franklin, do you all have that with your curriculum that you're using, or do you try to incorporate that? Or is this something, that's new that you'd want to incorporate? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties here. Here we go.
I use a lot more visual with some of my students because I'm working with third graders that are at like a kindergarten level. So we do try to do some things more visual, meaning I would like to start to do more with some of my higher students. But for some of my lower ones, we're still trying to build really a lot of those basic phonics skills that they don't have, and trying to do it, but it's just, it's been a struggle for me, honestly.
I do feel like teaching the systematic phonics and the, ensuring kids get all that is a more difficult way to approach reading, even though it's the right way, than to let them guess at words and look at pictures and say, like, if they're not changing the meaning, it's okay that they still read it this way. I don't want to say it's easier, but it does allow kids to read without us constantly correcting everything. All right. I feel like the MSV chapter was kind of hard. I mean, they had a lot of good, strategies and suggestions in here. But I feel like, again, most of us aren't telling kids to guess at words and just look at pictures to help them read. I feel like we've all grown as professionals so much, with all the different PD and things that we've been through, the shift has already been made without us, having to really try for it. Does that make sense? All right. Any other thoughts on chapter 5? Anything anybody had a question about from these chapters? Not that I'll know the answer, but I can try to look it up. All right, well, before we go, let's all just maybe put out there one thing that they'd like to try in their classroom before the next book study, something from one of these chapters. I'm just going to call on people as I see them in order here. So Corey, what's something you'd like to try to implement?
I'm not really sure. I feel like I'm just thinking of like my current class, and I just I don't know that we're necessarily where we need to be, but I feel like one thing in the back of the book where it was like things I can do, like the touch the text, and then the practice the patience. I know sometimes I'm like, I can be a little quick to be like, okay, maybe we just need to move on, but just like practice giving them a chance to maybe problem solve themselves or figure out how they can, decode words or.
Right, instead of just giving. I know I worked with a friend today who I was like, okay, I'm just going to tell you what this is, but they could do it. I just had to wait a minute. And I feel like me giving it to them is not, I mean, I do know better than that, but it's hard sometimes. Like the productive struggle is is a hard thing to watch sometimes.
Yeah, as far like, like for example, today we were doing like something in social studies, and it was like like 3 other kids are waiting, and you're just like, like we need to move this along. But like, just I think maybe just giving a little bit more time to
Right.
that.
Yes, I completely understand that. All right, thanks. Carolyn, how about you?
In my reading group, I have above level readers, but we're reading a very old book, The Boxcar Children. And so although they're fluent readers, I want to work more on adding the meaning to text, because there are so many old fashioned words. So we need to focus more on that, like a boxcar. What is a boxcar? Today we talked about buying bottles of milk, and I brought real glass milk bottles in from my mom's collection to share with them, because the story is so old. There's a lot of knowledge that needs to be built with meaning, unfamiliar
Right.
words. So we're
That's
working
really
on that.
That's awesome. All right, Susan, you're up.
I had written a note to myself that I need to do more orthographic mapping. So
I am with you 100% on that. I feel like I do it, but I still could do much more of it. So I'm totally with you on that. Thanks. Tina? Yeah.
I just finished letters 2, so between reading these 2 chapters and finishing letter 2, I don't think my brain was in the best place, and when I tried to absorb
Your
all these 2
cognitive load
chapters.
was heavy.
What was that?
You said your cognitive load was heavy.
Oh, very much. So like when I read these, it just felt like mush going into my brain. But just thinking about my own classroom right now, I feel like, as I mentioned before, we're so heavy on that code that I think I need to bring the fluency piece. I need to find a way to not just progress monitor those who are struggling, because everything we do is the code, the phonics, the decodable readers. And I think I'd like to try to get more not specifically decodable readers, and just monitor fluency a little bit more, because I just feel like I teach code at least 60 minutes a day. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I agree with you, and I feel like that's why I can't completely give up the F&P books. Not following their script, not following their, phonics, scope and sequence, but if you look at the books, you'll see that I feel like most of the code that we teach at certain points of the year for 1st and 2nd grade are embedded within those books. And I feel like there are some really good authentic texts in there that help kids with fluency. So I feel like it's a balance of how you use them, but I agree.
There's just so much. I mean, I don't know how you get to it all.
No, I don't either. And I don't know about any of you, but like I have, if you have reading groups, or, having kids for 20 minutes at a table, there's no way to get to it all. You feel like you're constantly just shoving forward.
I take pills. I call them happy pills. That's how I'm okay with all of it.
So that's what Kelly's going to bring to the table. All right, Kelly, what else are you going to implement this week or this next few weeks?
Well, I'll be honest, this is not super, or I haven't seen how it connects to what my class is struggling with now. Or specifically my group that's left behind when you girls come. They can read words. They can read the high frequency words. They can decode. They can write words out. But when I hand them a book, it's like they're like Chinese. Like to read a whole sentence in a book, they can't do it. And I can't figure it out, because if I handed them each word independent of the page in the book, boom, they could figure out each word. But I put 5 of the words on a page and they're like, the trees blow in the wind. And I'm like, no. That is not what it says. Not at all. So I don't really know. I have yet to get that situation fixed here.
I mean, I feel like you just keep chugging along with it. They have to practice it and see it. It's that stamina piece.
What if you put the words separately on cards, Kelly, and then built a sentence with those words so they could see the whole sentence together?
That is actually what my student teacher and I started with this week, breaking
Mhm.
sentences apart and having them put them in order.
Yeah, just a thought that might
Yeah.
help.
And then you have to use meaning.
Buzz off, Ash. Come on.
All right, Ash is up next. What are you gonna do when you're
I should have kept my mouth shut. I do like the orthographic mapping. I've always done like sound it out, but I've never really used like the boxes like that. And with my reading group, which I know you see some of them, so are coming across a lot of words, and it is interesting because in Willy Wonka, we're reading Chocolate Factory, Charlie and Chocolate Factory right now, because it's a little relief from test prep. But some of the words are like nonsense words, and so they have to sound them out to be able to do them. So they have to use
That's
that.
really
So-
good.
So if I start using, so I just was like associating it with that, but if I start using those boxes and making some of those nonsense words with those boxes, I think that might be helpful. So
I have
think,
I have extras in my room. You can come. I'll
Yeah,
bring them
okay.
to you tomorrow.
okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah. All right, Mackenzie, you're up.
Okay. I think for me, I focus so heavily, like having intervention groups, I focus so heavily on sounding out and decoding and breaking apart and, the sounds and syllables that sometimes I want to make sure that I'm also adding in that, helping them to like build the meaning and using context still, like, and so this chapter kind of brought that to the forefront for me, like, okay, got the sounding out part, that's what we really focus in on. And of course, I'm working with very decodable texts and the struggling readers, but to still have that, to still have them thinking about, okay, does this make sense though? Even if I sound it out, especially like for my students to give them another strategy when they're trying to access grade level text where they can't sound it out, but if they can use a little bit of sounding out and then also thinking about what makes sense to help them when they're in the classroom, when it's much harder than with me. So that was kind of my big takeaway for what I want to do.
No, and I like that a lot because this stuck out to me that it says, the MSV says we should ask kids first what makes sense there, but they changed it to say, does it make sense? So kids can cross-check in their mind and then still use that context to help them figure that out. Like that does make sense there. So I really like that strategy. Thank you, ma'am. All right, Elizabeth, and then Nicole, and then Jackie, and if Ken and Kelly are there.
Well, I don't have my own classroom. I'm a professional development specialist, but I have a secondary English teacher who has a kid that he can read words like he and the. He's in, I think, 9th grade. And so, but he has zero tools for being able to do anything else. Like he can't decode words. So the orthographic mapping, I actually found that you can scale up those boxes for secondary students. So I shared that information with that teacher. And so I think she will try that out, and I'll follow up with her next week and see how that worked out.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to hear that. If you can share it with us, that would be great next time.
Yeah, so we're trying to find some strategies for him, and the high frequency words that are relevant to a student, I think, are also something. He's in a CTE class, so she can pull vocab from there and do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, Nicole, you're up.
How, and I said more like the tricky words, being able for some of my students, giving them more strategies of what to do when they get back into the classroom, because they can do some of it in a small group, but like when they are in their classroom working on grade level text, seeing some of the words is hard for them, but being able to give them the strategies, like when they use the example of flamingo, how to break it down in order for them to help be more successful within the classroom and not feel, you know, more of that sense of like feeling defeated when they're in their classroom.
Right. I'm just going back and looking at it. Yes, for sure. And even being able to like front load that information for them
Yeah.
to be successful. Great. Thank you. All right. Ken and Kelly, are you there?
They did type
Are
into
there.
the chat as well. Oh, okay.
Yep. It took a restart of internet and computer and
Oh no.
so it's all right. It's all right. It's, you know, we live in the wilds of in the village of Walton. So, you know, like
That'll do it.
yeah, in the wilds. I guess for me, you know, again, the demographics of my group, so many of my students do struggle, you know, and that's one reason why I was interested in this, you know, doing this book study. You know, just because so much of it is assumed that they have these skills by, you know, the CKLA lesson we're doing. And so I found it just fascinating, you know, in that, in the first chapter that we were doing, you know, that the orthographic mapping, which many people have messaged, you know, like talked about, but, you know, just that idea that speech goes to print and not print to speech. And a lot of times when we are trying to sound out a word, you know, we start with, you know, the word is on the page and we're trying to figure it out, you know, so kind of changing that around perhaps to like, you know, word, you know, with the boxes and bringing the speech first and the sounds and then to the print. So that's something I'm looking into. And, you know, and also those, you know, high frequency words. I know in my classroom we have, and Kate, you shared it with me, so I'm not sure what word list it is, but, you know, for spelling guide piece, more so than, you know, the like posting sight words per se. So that's
Right.
something I was thinking of.
And I know we're going over, so if anyone has to go, I understand. And Kelly just brought that up, but I forgot something I absolutely love out of this book is on page 92. And I think this is what you're talking about, Kelly, the power words and how the first 13 power words make up 25% of words in children's texts.
Yeah.
So we took and we made Unitigo power words. And we cross-checked the CKLA tricky words, these words, and the Fry and the Dolch words, and looked at like the most important ones. So we do have this. Oh no, where am I? Why isn't this working? So like we made this and we took them all. So I forgot we did this. But this is what we use to check in on our kids. So is that what you're talking about, Kelly, or am I totally off?
No, it was the one that we put on my friend's desk. You had a magnet and we put it on the desk.
Oh yeah, okay, I gotcha. It's just like a mini word wall so they can spell the high frequency words correctly.
Yeah, because
Yep, and they're the words on that list, but yes, got it.
And so everyone ended up with a copy. Like
Good. I put one in my daughter's backpack. I'm sure her teacher really appreciated it, but I said, can she please, can you put this in her desk so she stops spelling the word what the wrong way and the word has the wrong way? As my good friend would say, they're practicing error and that is not helpful to their brains. So.
And Kenny put his in the chat. He's beside me. He thought it wasn't gonna work, so he typed it all out.
So I like where you mentioned about rereading that if you don't hear something the first time. Right. Oh, I feel like I underlined this too. I liked that.
You end up with so many, I mean, even just, not just students, but people you run into are so resistant to just reread even once. And like, I think thinking about it that way, like if I didn't hear you the first time, I easily ask, what could you say that again? And that's rereading's equivalent, you know, on the visual level, just reading it again. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, you know?
Where was that in the book? Can you tell me?
I couldn't find it when I went back. I was looking for it.
I know, because I'm like, where is this? Because I feel like this is so good.
It's in chapter 5, somewhere around 123 when it's talking about. I just can't figure out if it's right before or after.
So zooming in on rereading.
Oh, did I go there?
Oh yeah, listening again. Yep, I have it highlighted, so I feel like I agree that it was really good. Yes, I liked that too. All right, well then, oh, Jackie, did you want to add something in there?
You know, basically I would just do kind of like that reread because I think that's important, but the visual, we got to really work on that visual.
Yeah,
aspect.
Reading through the word.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much for participating tonight. And we'll have one final book study where we'll go through chapter 6 and then like just take some time to look at the website and share out different things. And maybe if you want to bring different resources that you have tried that you feel like have worked, you know, if you find Alconin boxes or Elizabeth said even ones for the higher grade, you know, the secondary grade levels. Anything like that, if you want to bring and, you know, maybe Aaron could help us upload it all into that Google Drive. You could email it to him. But other than that, I think we're all set. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.